and find out that we were doing something this weekend. Every time she comes to town, she always wants to come here, but you all never have anything going on the 1 week that she comes to town. So she's always so jealous. She's like, you went to St. Mark. So she said, are you, video? When your mom tells you to do something, you do it. So, good evening, ladies. How's everyone tonight? Good. It's a little chilly outside. So we're grateful for warmth on the inside and on the inside. Okay, so we have been talking for the last 2 days about having an aha moment, correct? We have talked about how we cannot help ourselves, but we can only truly be lifted, pushed, and transformed through the power of the Holy Spirit. That no matter how much I want to change my own life, true transformation only comes if I'm connecting with the Father. And so we've been reading through Luke chapter 15, a very familiar passage of scripture about the prodigal son, who started smelling himself, demanded what was owed to him, although not until much later in his life. And he ends up spiraling downward. He lived good for a while, right? And then he ends up spiraling downward and ends up in the pig pen with garbage in his mouth. And then it's at that time in his life when he has the what? The aha moment. And so aha, for those of you who have not been here, you can look on the front of your book. A is what?
Awakening.
Then
Honesty.
and then
Action.
Yes. So I have to open my eyes to the actual need for a transformation. And so what can keep us from having that transformation will be pride, right? Not wanting to confess that we're actually in the distant country. Can somebody remind me what the distant country is? Very simple term. Go.
I think it's any place where God is not.
Any place where I am hiding from God. I am pulling a Jonah. God said go to Atlanta and you went to Alaska. It is that strong of a way. You know what, God? This area of my life I don't want you to see. I don't feel like anybody should see it. And the tough part is God already knows how messed up we are. He knows how much we need him, but he's actually waiting for us to invite him into our distant and bring us out of the distant country. And so our honesty in the distant country means assessing where am I currently. I may have used to be an 8 on the attitude level. I am now a 5. But it doesn't mean that God doesn't want me to be a 2. So I have to be okay with realizing that my process isn't over. And as long as my process is still happening, I'm still a little bit in that distant country. So have I invited God into my work life, into my relationships, into how I govern myself or mentor those around me, whether they're children or otherwise? We all mentor someone. We're a friend, a sister, a daughter. We're many things to many people. Have I invited God into these places? And then we look at how do we leave God out? Do we see God as unpleasable, unmerciful, uncaring? Okay, so much so that we don't invoke his presence into these places in our lives. The distant country means humility. It means saying that I know I'm not as bad as sister so-and-so. I don't do that. I don't cuss folk out in the red light. I don't do all of that. But it doesn't mean that there aren't still some places that I don't want a candid camera on. And the hard thing to swallow is that heaven's candid camera is always on. And one day, the movie of my life will be played on Judgment Day, and I get to look and cringe at all the times that I thought I got away, but I was really in the distant country. So we arrive at this place because God has been tapping us and pinging us for a certain amount of time, telling us that this isn't the way that you need to go. You need to get it together. You may have a sermon that's preached about your specific situation. We've all had that happen. Where the sermon is preached, you hear God talking to you, but you may not do anything about it yet. And then you have a girlfriend or your mom or someone that cares about you to say, honey, that's not a cute personality attributes. You need to work on this. You should leave this person alone. I don't think that's the opportunity for you. I don't think that's the person you should have in your life. You're going the wrong way. Something is pinging you to say you're going the wrong way. But some of us are heavy sleepers. So we don't wake up when the little taps and pokes happen. We need that gigantic to go off to wake us up. And God has no problem with letting us tumble to this area if we choose to be heavy sleepers. And so the prayer for everyone this week is that we can have aha moments before the big alarm goes off. So we continued and we talked about desperate moments, how difficult circumstances and deserved consequences can bring us to aha moments. How most of us don't come skipping joyfully to the Lord. Just, you know what? It's a beautiful sunny day. I know God is real. And then you ask Jesus into your heart. But instead, most of us come crying, crawling, just, oh my God, Jesus, help me get out of this one, please. I promise I'm going to do the right thing. And finally, it gets bad enough, you messed it up enough that you finally get it together. And so we ask ourselves, what will trouble do to us? Will it draw us closer to God? Or are we going to pull a Jonah and try and run? We realize how blessed our lives are and how we need to choose to chase after God now. In optimism and sunny days. I don't want sickness or famine or distress or trouble in my life. We know trouble comes anyway. That's a guarantee of living and breathing. We can't do anything about trouble. We can't do anything about bereavement, loss. We can't do anything. Sometimes things come up a little short. But is it going to be just difficulty? Have I done something to move myself closer to this consequence? We talked about having that shopping problem or whatever, so you get laid off. You could have had that shoe money in savings, but you didn't. You had a problem. So part of it is difficulty, and then the other part is I deserve to experience some of these effects. And so it's only a matter of time before our decisions catch up to us. And we want to be attentive to the little alarms that God is giving us and grasping these aha moments before trouble comes. Then lastly, we ask, do we have people to help us flip the switch? Do we have folks that love us enough, that are honest enough to tell us the things that nobody else really wants to say? Do we have that friend, that loved one that says, honey, 95% of the things they say to us anyway is true, but it's that extra 5% that we really need. That gritty, ugly truth that helps us to wake up. So tonight, we are going further. We have talked about the distant country. We have talked about the awakening, the alarm going off. And then tonight, we're going to talk about honesty. About talking to yourself, chapter 5. We're going to get as far into honesty as we can, but there's such a big transformation that happens here that he stretched it. But we should have read or are reading, so we're going to get there eventually. And so he talks about going to the barbershop, and the woman that's cutting his hair is looking at him strange, and she says, your ears are lopsided.
Yeah.
He's like, what are you talking about? And then he goes to look in the mirror, and he realizes, oh my gosh, my face is crooked. I'm not together in the least bit. And so he asks us, have you ever looked in the mirror and seen something that you cannot unsee?
That you cannot unsee.
Now you see it and you can't unsee it. Yes.
When I first got married, about the first year I was married, my husband said to his friend who was sitting in the living room, and he said to his friend, man, it's a whole family of us. He said, a whole family of big ears, the whole family. Until he said that, I never looked.
Like it's everybody. It's everybody. So have you ever never looked in the mirror and now I can't unsee it. So you're frustrated. And so he says that when we're talking to ourselves, we have to equip ourselves with some brutal honesty. Not just, girl, you need to go walking, but you need to run. You know what I mean? Like, being honest with ourselves. I told you I went to Target and it was like maybe 2 or 3 sizes above what I used to wear when I first got married. And I've been married a little while and had a kid. And I was like, these must run small. No, they don't run small. It's not Target. It's not Target. It's not that much of a clothing gap. Sometimes different styles and sizes and stuff. But it ain't like 2 or 3 sizes difference. It might be 1. So it's being honest enough with yourself to say, you know what, I see this, it needs work, and now I can't unsee it. And so he says we need all 3 aspects. I need awakening, I need honesty and action. I can't skip one. I can't be awake and then go do something. I still have to be honest enough with myself to say, you know what, girl, you need some work. Brutal honesty is necessary. And so he laughs about his ears, of course. But he's like, you know what? There's nothing I can do. He says, many of us never get past the awakening. Page 84. If we can't bring ourselves to honestly say, I was wrong, aha will not happen. And so the prodigal son comes and he says to himself, with no one else around, I'm a messed up somebody. If I can just go back home, it'll be okay. And he's honest enough with himself to say, I got and received what I deserved. Can we be real enough to say that we need to let God's light shine on some dark places? That there are some things that I do or think when no one else is around that make me a person that's not fit for God's blessings. That make me disqualified. Thank God for his grace. So he says, avoiding brutal honesty will short-circuit lasting change. If there's recognition without repentance, aha does not happen. And then interesting, I thought this was so funny. He says, more often than not, the confessions I hear are motivated by discovery. Somebody discovered that I did something wrong, so now I am filled with regret, and I tell you what I did. He says, if you're a parent, chances are you've seen this in your kids, where they go to get the cookie jar. The kid says, I'm sorry, but what they're really sorry about is they don't have a better plan for stealing. They got caught. They got caught. They got caught. Yeah. And so he tells us to go. We can't do this right now. But he says, get up and go in the bathroom. Look in the mirror and ask yourself some difficult questions. He said, they won't all apply to you, but He says, do you spend more time this week on Facebook or doing something else enjoyable or in prayer? You might not be a Facebooker, but you might be something else. Or do you spend more time in prayer? When was the last time you told someone that you really care about, I love you? Or I endeavor to say, you may say, I love you, but have you said, I appreciate you for doing this? Have you helped someone in need in the last month? When was the last time you said to someone, I was wrong, please forgive me? Those ugly words. I like those words. It says, can you name one missionary whom you pray for? I said, do I know anybody that's a traveling missionary? I need to find somebody, a missionary to pray for. When was the last time you just sat with an open Bible? Just sat there. And what we talked about last night was God wants silence and solitude from us, but some of us are so busy going, and doing, and being awesome and being great and chasing all these things that we no longer have time for stillness. And God says it's time to be brutally honest with yourself about the things that you got to work on. And a tough thing that's not very exciting, he says on page 91, he says, most of us don't practice voluntary confession. But you must tell the truth about yourself to somebody. volunteer that. And so he hilariously says, let's say you're speeding and you're going 80 and a 65 or 60 or something. You don't get caught, so you slow down. You're like, oh, I'm speeding. He said, but do you ever go up to a police officer the next day and say, sir, you didn't see me, but I was going fast. I just wanted to say that to you because I need to get it off my chest. Nobody does that. No, I know I would not. I've got enough tickets on my own. I would never confess it. So he says that we volunteer our honesty. Voluntary confession is when we regularly acknowledge our sin and honestly admit our weaknesses to someone in our lives. And so I can say, for example, struggling with anxiety sometimes, being a worrier, sometimes feeling a little overwhelmed about certain things. And I can tell my husband, babe, I'm having a day where I just feel, he's like, you know what, me too. And sometimes we recognize just the work of the enemy getting us all hyped up over nothing. And then a lot of times it's just my own thoughts going rampant or being stressed out about certain things. But can we volunteer that honesty, that weakness to someone that cares about us? So he says, if I wasn't a believer, it wouldn't be a problem. He says, unbelievers all the time. Yes.
I did it one time when I first got my license. I was at work and I gave a patient the wrong medicine. And my supervisor told her, why did you tell her? I said, because I gave the wrong medicine.
Yeah.
I could not keep it myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And you never know what that could have, the repercussions down the line, right? So it's better to volunteer it instead of me keeping it to myself. And then we, keeping things like that to ourselves is poisonous to our spirit. And so for some of us, it may seem like an act of self-sabotage, like I'm out to mess myself up by confessing, right? That could feel like, oh, you could be in trouble. But I would rather volunteer that information than it cause me drama down the line. And so he says that our heart requires honesty with ourselves, with God, and with someone else. Do you have someone in your life that you could volunteer that information to? Would you even want to or feel comfortable enough? So my mom, she taught me, if I was having like a woman day, right? She says, men's inclination is to fix stuff. She said, honey, if you're having a day, you can say something like I'm having a moment, but tell the moment to your best girlfriend. Not like all the girlfriends, but you have that one home girl that you can call about anything, right? That one friend that she's not going to judge you. She's going to laugh, And she's like, all right, I know you're having a moment. Now what are we going to do about it? I'm not going to sit in the pity party with you. But I will listen, and then we're going to go into action from there. And so she said, but that's what girlfriends are for. And I tell young wives all the time, they're like, well, my husband is supposed to be, listening. I'm like, girl, that's what your tribe is for. That girl, that best girlfriend. You ain't gonna sit there and tell him, oh, I'm having all these struggles as, I don't know, I'm hormonal. I don't know. He's gonna be like, but your best friend will be like, girl, me too. And so it's important for us to have these people in our lives that we can be honest enough with to say, this is my weakness right now. I can call you and say, I'm filled with anxiety today about this. And then tomorrow you're going to check on me and not judge me for that. We need to have someone in our lives that will hold us accountable, that will make sure that we push towards our objectives, and where we can just be open and honest, because honesty leads us to healing from that particular thing. But if we try to kind of stifle it all down inside and not address it, then we're going to continue to, our spirits are going to be heavy and weighed down from that. And so he talks about how people who keep their secrets in, people who keep their sin in, they struggle more with worrying, anxiety, depression. And we know that all this stuff translates over into physical ailments, because now I'm just poisoning my energy. I'm poisoning my soul, my spirit with being weighed down with life. With the stuff that I don't feel like I can fix myself. I need an accountability partner. I need somebody that's going to say, girl, you getting it together today? Is today a better day? So one of my best friends said, my day was horrible. So this morning I messaged her. I said, are you feeling better today? She said, yes, I spent time in prayer. I did that. I said, okay, good. We can move on. But do we have people that we can be open enough with to say, you know what, girl, I need prayer about this thing because I'm stressed out about it. And my mom, I love her, she said, you know what, that rest and peace comes from God. That healing comes from the Lord. And it's okay for us to be human and need others until God sends us that rest and that healing, that peace. You know, that peace you feel with stuff, after stuff it might not be fixed yet, but all of a sudden you feel like a rest come over you that it's going to be okay. That rest comes from the Lord, okay? And so he's asking, as a Christian, are you hiding your business? And it's not that we sit down in a room of 30 or 40 people like we're here tonight and tell it all. Some of us didn't want to mention at all what our distant countries were. But do I have that one person that I can say, you know what, here's a shortcoming in my life right now, and I got to work on that. And so one of the interesting aspects that he says is in chapter 6, denial. If I ignore it, maybe it will go away. So he says, are you turning off the light? Somehow we avoid looking in the mirror. So he gives the example of these documentaries where they go in and they turn on the light in the hotel room and they see all these stains and scary stuff in the sheets. And he says, the one woman, she's like, turn it off, turn the light off. And then they turn the black light off and she's like, whew, as if the stains went away. The stains didn't go anywhere. They're still there, but the light that was shining on them shifted. And so he says, are we avoiding this light that reveals our shortcomings, that shows us our business? He says, somehow we avoid looking in the mirror. Okay, go in the bathroom, just like, and then look. Just be like, okay. That needs a little work. You're supposed to, be checking yourself. And you know what I'm saying? Like we're supposed to look at ourselves. Amen. We're supposed to, health-wise and spiritually. Yeah. We're supposed to look every month. Supposed to look. Right. So are you avoiding looking in the mirror? Are you avoiding asking that person's thoughts about what you're doing, what you're working on, getting positive feedback? And so even in my business, I have these women that I just kind of bounce ideas off of. What do you think about this instead of this? And they're like, oh, I don't know. Well, I think you should go this way. And usually the council, like 2 or 3 ladies, they all say the same thing. That maybe I was thinking anyhow, but they provide that confirmation for me. And so we may ask someone's thought, that person that we can be honest with, we go and we ask their thoughts about it. He says, going to the doctor. To some women who have a genetic inclination towards maybe a certain kind of disease or whatever, you need to be on top of it. But what we do is we go the opposite direction. Like, you know what? Jesus said go to Atlanta. I'm going to Alaska because I don't want to be checked. Do we avoid doing the stuff that we're supposed to do? And so it says, do we pull a David? Okay, he talks about David and Bathsheba. How David knew he was sleeping with somebody else's wife and didn't confess not a bit of it. He just kept piling more and more and more dirt on top of it, hoping that no one was going to find out how messed up he was. And it was over a year later when the prophet came to him and said, you know what, there's something messed up going on in your kingdom. He said, what is it? We found out what it was. He said, you know what? That man deserves to be slaughtered. And then the prophet said, bruh, I'm talking about you. Oh my God. He thought he got away. And so how long is our honesty going to take us to bring us out of the distant country? What has to go terribly wrong? David's lack of confession cost him so much. Because he wouldn't be honest. He wouldn't be open enough to say, you know what, God, I've sinned against heaven and against Uriah, got you killed. He was all up on the ground in sackcloth and ashes, praying for God's favor to come back to him. So some of us, we're just in denial. He says we may disagree. And so he says, he talks about the young man that comes to him and talks to him. He says, you know what? I think the Bible doesn't really mean that premarital sex is wrong. He He's like, these decipherings and changing up some stuff, that's not what the Bible really says. And he says, well, let me guess, you got you a girlfriend. And y'all getting it in, aren't you? He was like, yeah. Just because you disagree doesn't mean that it's okay for you to do, that it's okay for us to stay there. He says some of us defend ourselves. And he talks about his personal trainer friend. And he says, how's your diet and exercise going? He's looking at me making food and stuff. How's it going? Looking at that little extra he said he has in his midsection. He says, well, how's your spiritual life? Because he's a pastor, and that's his way of saying, mind your business.
Right.
Getting defensive. And that's what some of us do. If anybody comes to us with any kind of honesty, critique, we can go down the line of all the reasons why they're wrong, you're incorrect, I don't even like the way you said this to me. And then we hover on that area as opposed to if they were actually telling the truth. Maybe I do have an attitude problem. I was wrong. And getting that out. So God's word illuminates, and do we hide or do we embrace the light? He says there's distraction, where I literally do everything else but. Do I do everything else? Do I go and be the world's busiest person? And I realized I was doing that this morning because I'm doing this really hard workout program now, which I don't like, but it's the only way for me to get like my fitness back. And I was doing everything else in my house to avoid press and play. I am so serious. I was cleaning stuff. I was fussing at my children. I was doing everything else but press and play because it's like an hour of just total torture. And I realized, I said, you know what? I'm doing the same thing that the book talks about. Just avoiding what I know I need to do in order to make it. And so he says that denial reminds us if I ignore it, then it's going to go away. He says, recently I read another example of denial. What do you think is the number one way people respond when they get a bill in the mail they don't have the money to pay? What do you do?
They don't open it.
They know what's in there.
You know what's in there. You know I'm just going to fall. I'm just going to keep it right here. You're not going to open it. You're not going to open it. And so it's hilarious how some of us just need that reality check. Some of us had to just pull the credit report and be like, and look at what's there. Some of us just got to get on the scale and some of us got to go to the doctor. Some of us have to have that honest conversation with our loved one. And so what me and my husband would do sometimes on long trips is we would say, what can I do to be a better spouse? And then hush up until we got the answer. The real answer. Not the fake, you know what, you're great. But I could really use some edification in this area. Or I would appreciate us growing together in this way. Or I would love this, so we would learn more about each other's love languages and all these kind of things. And they talk about love languages for every kind of relationship. Because not everybody views love the same way. But can I have these brutally honest conversations? Or am I in denial? Some of us choose just to defend ourselves. We distract ourselves, from what's really going on. He says we need a reality check. Someone might have an awakening that they need to do something different. It's gotten bad. Changes should have been made a long time ago, but now the situation is desperate. They're humiliated, embarrassed, in pain, but it's essential for us to look at ourselves in the mirror with the light on and say, you know what, girl, there's work to do. He says coming to one's senses is one thing, but it's another thing to be honest about reality. It means looking at where we spend money. He said acknowledging unnecessary and frivolous purchases, going through all the debts and laying it all on the table. And some of us, it may not be financial, but it's something else where I have to lay it all on the table. Not just in front of myself, not just in front of God, but even in front of someone else. So you know what, I messed up in this area and I need help. I need accountability. I need a partner to walk with me through this process. Because true conversion, transformation is a process. And so he reminds us that we can disagree, defend, be distracted, and then we can also practice projection. This one makes me laugh because my husband preached a sermon on it not long ago about Adam and Eve. And he was like, Adam's real mess up wasn't that he, had the fruits. He was like, you know what? I blame you, God. And he said, how did he blame God? He said, Lord, the woman that you gave me, she messed me up. And so projection, society is famous for it. Since it goes all the way back to Genesis. Adam blamed Eve, Eve blamed the snake. We just going to go back and forth with the blame game. So I have to say, it's my fault. It's my responsibility. And I see so many people, a lot of the ladies that I work with, and they're like, listen, this is my issue, that's my issue. It's these people's fault that I don't have the life that I want. And even if I just adjust my perspective and my viewpoint, it's still my responsibility. How you spend your time is your responsibility. How you spend your money is your responsibility. How you love people is your responsibility. How you respond, your responsibility. So some of us, we have to internalize that people can do us wrong. Our life may not have been perfect. We may have folks, family members or otherwise that didn't do us right growing up in the present. We know they're going to mess up again in the future. But nobody can force us to respond a certain kind of way. And so I was talking with Miss Patrick last night. We were laughing about, I don't know if anyone saw that John Gray clip about him. He was talking about his wife. And how she, he basically said she went through so much pain, making him into the man that he is now. And all these women were very, very triggered by a man saying that his wife helped to propel him to who he was. They said he should already be that way. He should be self-motivated. He should be this. And so she came on social media and she said, what is the definition of a help me? What am I even here for if he already has it all together? I'm supposed to be able to help him with the vision. I'm supposed to be able to help encourage you. My husband's love language is words of affirmation. Mine is quality time. I'm just spoiled. You need to sit down with me. I'm a little bad about it. But his words are words of affirmation. So he gets boosted when I encourage him. But some of us, we don't look at we don't look at ourselves. We automatically project onto what somebody else is not doing. And so all these ladies got on there and they said, he should already have it together, and we shouldn't have to raise men and all this stuff. I said, nobody's talking about raising a baby. He should have a job. He should have some kind of goal. And some of these ladies, they settled with the guy that was on the couch, unemployed, and she was paying his bills and helping him do all this kind of stuff, and he walked all over her, and she chose the wrong one.
That's right.
She married the wrong one, and now she's mad at these other folks because they had a vision and a plan, and the wife was doing her job. There's a difference. So they're projecting the blame onto men. They're projecting the blame on everybody else for your bad decision. That he smacked you around before you married him, then you married him anyway and thought he was going to change. Quit. No more projecting. And so we have to internalize, what am I responsible for? And so he says, projection says, it's not my fault, so it's not my responsibility. I've had someone tell me, I said, we want to adopt one day. And they said, well, you guys just have a call to children's ministry. I said, no, I really don't. I really don't. And they said, well, everyone has their own personal, calling to something. Yours is just to want to adopt. I said, well, no, adoption is a kingdom principle. God the Father adopts misfit children, i.e. you and I. And then there are so many children, our children, who are sitting in foster care with no one to love them. And they said if every Christian family adopted one child, orphanism in the world would be gone. Amen. If we opened our homes up to one child, just one, we would close all orphanages. And so I thought, well, that would be like me saying I don't have to feed the homeless because it's not my calling. I don't have to help my community because, I'm just not about economic development. What does that sound like? So it's projecting on someone else that I don't want to do what I'm supposed to do. It's inconvenient to raise kids, to take somebody else's kids even more. So I'm going to project onto you. I'm going to push that onto you. So what are you responsible for? He says, instead of being honest and confessing his sin, Adam said to God, that woman you put here with me, it's not my fault, it's hers. So we have to be honest about responsibility. He said, try this. Say these 4 words. I'm a sinner. I am a sinner. Say it with me. I am a sinner. He said, say it again. I am a sinner. Ugh. Instead of staying in denial or projecting our mistakes on someone, the prodigal son was honest. And so he said, stop playing the blame game. And so this part was so interesting to me. He said, projection happens a lot in marriage, and I endeavor to say in any kind of relationship. It says a marriage starts having trouble, one spouse blames the other. Nothing has really changed since the first marriage in Genesis. Instead of taking responsibility, we point out what other people are doing wrong. He said, I've listened as husbands and wives confess affairs and admit to abuse, both with no remorse, because they have convinced themselves that they are the victim. They make it sound as if they had no choice based on the way their spouse treated them. Mm-hmm. Have we ever said that? That someone else did me this way, so I'm justified to respond like this. I'm allowed to cut you off. I'm allowed to be unforgiving because of what you did. I'm allowed to be a little salty and bitter because of what you did to me. You didn't support me. When I needed somebody, you weren't there. So I'm allowed to hold on to that. And so God is like, listen, you got to own up to that thing. You're not allowed to be unforgiving because they're wrong. You just got to climb over the hill and swallow your pride. So he says that sometimes God gets the credit when we are projecting. He says God doesn't get credit when things are going good, but when they go bad, God usually gets blamed. He says, a few years ago, I pulled into a crowded parking lot, and then the wind blows and snatches his car door, and it bangs into a practically brand new car that's next to his. So he calls the insurance company later. He's like, listen, this is what happened. And the insurance claim guy's like, listen, dude, it's not your fault. It's what we call an act of God. Where it was the wind that blew your hand and blew the car door. It wasn't because I didn't hold it tight enough. I knew it was windy outside. But instead, it snatched it, and now it's called an act of God. He says, really? We're blaming God for certain, it was my hand. My responsibility. But he managed to get over because it was considered an act of God. So he says he could blame God for all the factors that are out of his control. But we must take responsibility for what we can control. And the prodigal son went home and apologized to his father. This kind of apology is rare, but it's pure and honest. And what most of us do is we say, it's my fault, but if you hadn't done this, and this, I wouldn't have done this. We say, I'm sorry, and you should be sorry too. Here's a PowerPoint of the reasons why.
Yeah.
We say, I messed up, but because of what you said and how you said it, that's the reason I responded like I did. And so there's a mom book that I read some time ago, and there was a chapter that said, I would be less angry if you were better behaved. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so true. And so she goes to the point of how we as grown folks, and I would even say spiritually mature women, right? We will project onto others that I would respond better if only you would do this. And I don't take responsibility for my own behavior, my own language, my own attitude. And so today my kids were having some kind of dispute. I said, everybody be like this. Y'all can do it. Y'all do it. Great job. I said, you see how we just control those facial muscles? Because I think my daughter bit her brother when they were wrestling. She was an accident. I didn't mean to. I said, baby, it's teeth. You control your mouth. It's not, Let's not call it an accident. Let's not say I couldn't help it. Let's just be honest enough to say you did it and apologize. But just like we raised our eyebrows, God has given us the gift of self-control. And something that is traumatic for me personally, at least, is that if I really have the Holy Spirit in my heart, I can control myself. I can control myself. I'm responsible. And so we have to move away from projection, denial, distracting, and going to get busy with everything else just to realize I haven't spent any time for real with God today. I didn't just go lay on my face somewhere, just listening quiet. I did the drive-through prayer. You know, like, ooh, Lord, bless my day as I'm getting into my clothes and getting in the car. You do the drive-through prayer as opposed to really sitting down with the Father and making that time. So we distract ourselves and we become so busy with everything else that we no longer really look for the illumination of God in our lives. And so it says there's something powerful and cleansing in the simple act of dropping any embellishments to your admission of guilt. No ifs, no ands, no buts. Is there something you need to take responsibility for? Maybe there's someone who needs to hear you accept some fault, not as a run-on sentence full of excuses, but the short, simple, and powerful truth. And so we could go into minimize, but it's almost 7 o'clock, and we want to do at least 1 or 2 questions. But the question is, am I projecting onto somebody else? Am I not examining myself to figure out what do I need to work on? And so question number 1, do you have someone in your life who asks you hard questions and to whom you can confess sin? Yes or no? Yeah. Yes. Someone I can say, you know. Now, I feel like there's some sin that you can confess, and there's some stuff that's like, I don't really want to tell anybody that. So then I guess we have to prayerfully consider and get over our pride in terms of telling that ugly stuff. You know what I mean? Like, you know, none of us are like, you know, serial killers or anything. But, you know, it's like that ugly thing, you know, that's not that attractive. There's some stuff that if men did it, they would never get away with it, but we do. You know, me and my husband joke about that all the time. We're like, you know, if a man throws a plate or follows a woman that is stalking and abused, but women throw stuff all the time when they're mad. Like, some women are like legitimately crazy. And you're like, wait a second, that's not, if a man were to do that, that is so unacceptable. So it's important for us to ask ourselves hard questions and develop those kind of relationships. And so he says, when we're faced with uncomfortable truth, what are the emotions we experience that lead us to denial? When we are faced with uncomfortable truth, what emotions are we feeling that make us deny it? What emotions when we're denying what we did or dismissing it? Guilt, good. Hoping it'll go away. And I've found that we usually minimize our own mess ups and then we can like magnify other people's. Yeah. You remember everything they did. I know the answer to this one, but why is it so difficult for us to accept fault with no ifs, ands, or buts? Why can't I take the fault?
Because people want to be right.
Because you want to be right.
People want to be right. People want to be accepted.
Yes, I'm justified. You know what? You did this, I did this, but you did it first. Sound like children on the playground. And then it says, is there someone that you need to admit fault to right now? Write out what you need to say to them. And watch for projection in subtle ways you try to excuse yourself. And then go to them and read what you've written.
At church or work.
He don't say. So it doesn't really matter where it is. And I've found that often God is holding up stuff for us personally because we don't own up to things. You know, there are certain blessings and opportunities and doors to be open, but because we're missing something somewhere, there's that hole somewhere. You know, like my husband, for example, he was reminded of I think he paid for rent back in college. Like back in college, he paid for rent, and the check bounced when he was 19 or however, and it caused the other guy's finances to be messed up. And so one day when we were talking about like, oh no man, and all this other kind of stuff, we were going through this process, and the Holy Spirit brought back to his mind that particular instant. And he messaged the guy on Facebook and said, I need you to call me. I'm not trying to sell you nothing. I just need you to call me. And he sent the guy the money. And the guy was like, he said, that was like 15 years ago. He said, do you know? He's like, that says a lot about the person that you are. I don't know if the guy's a believer or not. I have no idea. But it said a lot about, his relationship with the Lord, that it brought it back to mind. And so the thing is that God shines his light. We may have something in our minds as we're asking God to cleanse our hearts, to make us better, to help improve us. We're saying, okay, Lord, there's some stuff I need to work on, okay? And so if God is bringing somebody to your mind, now you are responsible for doing exactly